So now we're just going to be moving into inviting Stephanie Camacho Van Dyke and some youth leaders who will be discussing how to advocate and support trans students and loved ones.
Thank you so much, Britt. Just if you could be patient with me while I project my screen. 1 second. Oop, loading. Okay, perfect. I think we're good here. I think we got this. So thank you so much. Happy Trans Pride, everybody. I hope you all are having a wonderful day. I just also want to spotlight our presenters and panelists for doing just such a wonderful job. It truly is an honor to kind of share space and to build community with you all today. It's just been just a wonderful experience. Although it's virtual, we still made it possible for all of us to come together. And so our presentation is supporting and advocating for trans students and young loved ones. As Britt mentioned, my name is Stephanie Camacho Van Dyke. My pronouns are she, her, ella. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Education at the LGBTQ Center of C. I'm going to pass it off to some of my teammates to introduce themselves. So, Yanel, I'll let you jump in. Okay, let's see, Manny or Anna, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, hello, everybody. Again, my name is Manny Antunes. I am the youth program coordinator here at the center. And I've been here for about almost a year. So I'll hand it over to Anna.
Annie, my name is Anna Morrison, pronouns are she, her, hers, ella. And I am the youth programs assistant here at the center, and I started back in early June. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Yanel.
Hey everyone, sorry about that. I'm not sure what's going on with my video, but I will work on it. I'm Yanel. I use they, them pronouns. I identify as non-binary. Super stoked to have heard that last part and everything we've been hearing. But my position at the LGBTQ Center is a mental health counselor in the Elevate program. So with that, I'm going to transfer it back to Manny.
Stephanie.
Or Steph.
Stephanie, sorry about that.
It's all good. It's all good. Thank you all. All right, so yes, we're all part of the Advocacy, Education, and Youth Department at the center. So we're gonna move forward. Just really quickly, the presentation today is normally an hour and a half long, and we've had to truncate it to fit into 30 minutes. So we're gonna provide as much information as possible, and then also if folks are interested, we can send you a PDF copy of today's presentation in full. So just let us know. In terms of our presentation goals, our goals are to educate parents, guardians, teachers, and our audience members today on the various disparities that impact LGBTQ youth, especially our trans and non-binary youth, whether at home, in school, and in the community. And then two, to understand what steps can be taken to actively support a trans student, child, or loved one, and also how to educate yourself and advocate for trans youth. So we do have some best practices towards the end of this presentation that you can adopt, but that'll come shortly. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it back over to Manny to discuss some data and statistics.
Hi, everybody. So I'll try to put.
Oh, sorry, Manny.
Sorry.
I forgot about this slide. So we usually have a terminology list that we offer too. So if you'd like to, please check out the Fenway Institute and the Human Rights Campaign. They have really great glossaries full of terms and definitions. If you'd like to become more familiar with language and staying updated with language that's used in the community. So I encourage you to check it out and to review. And Manny, I'll hand it over back to you. I'm so sorry.
Oh, don't apologize, you're fine. Okay, thank you, Stephanie. So the LGBT community disparities. The report Growing Up LGBTQ in America and Gender Expansive Youth report outlines the results of the Human Rights Campaign groundbreaking surveys of the experience of LGBTQ youth. It provides a stark picture of the difficulties they face. The impact of their well-being is profound. However, these youth are quite resilient. The findings are a call to action for adults who want to ensure that young people can thrive. So let's look at the statistics. Let's see. Sorry, I can't see. So youth disparities at home. So quick question. How many youth do you think are out to their immediate family? If you can put it in the chat, a quick guess. What percentage of LGBTQ youth do you think are out? I see 53%, 2%, 28%, 20%, 5%. All right. So actually more than half of 56% of LGBT youth say they are out to their immediate family, which is unfortunately not a good percentage. And as far as having an accepting family, what percentage of those individuals who reported said that their families were accepting? What percentage do you think? Let's see, 48%, 40%, 5%. Yeah, so those who reported, a third, 33% of the LGBTQ youth say that their family is not accepting of LGBTQ people. So pretty startling statistics. And so for trans youth disparities, so less than half of the gender expansive youth reported having an adult in their family they could turn to if they felt worried or sad. Looking outside the family, 59% of gender expansive youth said that they have an adult they could turn to. When compared to their peers, gender expansive youth reported the smallest percentage of these two resources available to them. So this is very unfortunate for our youth today and explains a lot of the issues that happen to them within the schools. And since there's no support, or there's no lens through way of supporting our youth in our school systems. We can move to the next slide, Stephanie. As far as schools, first, I would like to touch base on the LGBTQ youth. They're more than twice as likely as non-LGBTQ youth to be verbally harassed, called names at school. And then LGBTQ youth are twice as likely as their peers to say they have been physically assaulted, kicked, or shoved at school. And LGBTQ youth are about twice as likely as non-LGBTQ youth to say they have been excluded by their peers because they are different. And then following, less than 1/3, which is 30% of gender expansive youth reported strongly agreeing that most of their peers do not have a problem with their identity as an LGBTQ person. This is the smallest percentage across all respondents. And in the community, gender expansive youth are much less likely to report definitely fitting in their community, or 5% of the gender, only 5% of the gender expansive youth reported definitely fitting in, while 30% reported definitely not fitting in. This is in stark contrast to their peers. For example, roughly 1/3 of straight cisgender respondents feel they definitely fit in. 6 times more than gender expansive youth. So if you take a look at the picture here, it's a very slim number of people who feel that they fit in their community. And the health safety of Orange County trans youth. So if you look at the first bubble here, it says miss school because you felt very sad, hopeless, anxious, stressed, and angry. 21.1% of trans youth answered in the past 30 days answered that. 7.7% of non-trans youth. How safe do you feel when you are at school? Unsafe or very unsafe? 21.2% of trans youth and 4.3% of non-trans youth. And the other question is, did you ever seriously consider attempting suicide in the past 23 months? 49.2% trans youth and 15.2% non-trans youth. As you can see, not fitting in or not being accepted within your family or community really affects our trans youth mental health. So it's very imperative that we address this as a community to advocate for our youth. So with that, I will pass it on to Yanel.
Thanks, Manny. So with some of the stats that Manny just shared, it's like not a mystery why trans youth are have higher risk of mental health. So they deal with violence, victimization, a lot of discrimination in schools, within their homes, just in the community. They're at higher risk for depression, anxiety, self-harming, substance use, sexual risk behaviors, and suicidality. So kind of how Manny had just mentioned, studies show that up to 50%, half, 1 in 2, that's a big number, are going to contemplate or do contemplate suicide. And it's even higher if they live in a transphobic or unsupportive household. So as we were talking about earlier in this presentation is that community aspect is really important. So many trans, and then even if they do seek access to mental health services, it's not always affirmative. And then that can even make it even more of an issue because they're going to someone for help and they can't even talk about what's really going on. So having access to gender affirming care to address their dysphoria can reduce, if they do have access to that, it can reduce their overall dysphoria and overall distress. So yeah, with that, I'm going to pass it over to Steph.
Awesome. Thank you, Yanel. So now we're going to just flip to discussing current legislation here in California. As you all may be aware, just this year alone, there's been an incredible shift for anti-trans legislation across the country. We see that there's at least 33 states that have introduced more than 100 bills to curb the rights of trans people, youth, and students across the country alone. And so what's scary is that a lot of these bills are making their way into state legislatures, which is just frightening, right? In these states that are just working to take away the rights of trans youth and people. Here in California, we're very fortunate to be in a state that is working on passing progressive laws. For the next slide, you can see here, this is an LGBTQ student legislative milestone that demonstrates how far we've come in the past 20 years. Even in the last 10 years alone that we've seen that there's more laws that have been put in place here in California that support LGBTQ students and in particular trans students and youth, which is just amazing to see. So from including comprehensive sex education to inclusive curricula that talks about LGBTQ history and LGBTQ historical figures, to having more support for staff and school faculty on LGBTQ cultural competency. We do see that there's this shift in education awareness and visibility that's just really great to see. I do want to spotlight 2 laws in particular that that uplift and support LGBTQ students. One is the School Success and Opportunities Act, which was passed in 2013. And so we see this particular law coming into place that was kind of one of the first to really create that domino effect in creating these inclusive laws here. And so the School Success and Opportunity Act mandates for transgender students to have equal access to school facilities. So this includes sports teams, locker rooms, bathrooms, as well as different activities that take place on school campuses. And so we see here with support of this law is that trans students are given the opportunity to fully participate within their gender and to just kind of see themselves reflected within the student body, which is really great. So having them be given, every opportunity to thrive and really navigate school, which is awesome to see. We also do have just recently another law that passed back in 2019 is the Updating Transgender Students Academic Records, which is AB 711. And this allows for trans students to update academic records, as well as their high school diplomas and certificates to reflect the name, their legal name that they would like to go by, which is really awesome because now we see that there's this shift in making sure that records are updated across the board and they don't have to fight tooth and nail to get, a high school diploma updated. So that is really great to see in terms of support for trans students and making sure that, that their legal name and gender is accurately reflected in these critical documents, right? So very, very important to see. Of course, with this said, this is just the past 10 years that we've seen these laws, but there's so much more work that has to be done within the school spaces and really holistically creating safe and supportive environments for students. So it doesn't take, one person, it really truly takes a village to create these spaces. So with that said, I believe I'm going to turn it over to Anna to Yanel, to talk about those first steps that you can take in really supporting trans students and your loved ones.
Great, thanks, Steph. So this section's about supporting mental health of trans youth and also seeing how you could be an ally. So first and foremost, asking and correctly using someone's pronoun and name is probably one of the most basic things that you can do to create that safe space, create that gender affirming space for trans youth. When someone's referred to with a wrong name or pronoun or dead name, it doesn't only make them feel disrespected, it can be really dangerous for folks who other students in the class that don't know about them being trans. It can feel dismissive and validated. It can create a lot of that dysphoria. So by using someone's correct pronouns and name, this can also create a sense of euphoria for that trans youth. And then with being an advocate for your trans student or loved one by calling out transphobic comments, not tolerating it in class or just in general. If you're in a space of if you're in a place of privilege, use that privilege to be supportive, because it oftentimes, I can speak from experience as a non-binary person, I oftentimes I can't do it for myself. So it really helps to have someone who can do that for me. Also, attending parent groups to better understand how to support your loved one. It is a foreign topic to some people. So understanding how other parents are doing it as well is really helpful. Educating yourself on the daily microaggressions that trans youth face and just trans folks in general. You want to be sensitive to their needs. You don't want to assume someone's experience. And then also this part's really important is addressing your own internal biases. You might not know that you have them. So really work to kind of dismantle those. And then always be curious and affirming. Refer them to counseling services. If you see a trans youth struggling with mental health and you know that you want to be there, you can be there to offer support, but understand your limits and have them seek professional help. But as we were talking about before, make sure you're referring them to services that are actually trans affirmative and inclusive. Yeah, you can move to the next slide, Steph. Some best practices for supporting youth, giving your trans student, child, or family member a space to open up and share their thoughts and feelings. You want them, like, treat them like a normal person, because that's what they are, right? You want to be curious about their hopes and dreams and their futures, and like be open and curious about like what happened at school, like provide those empathic statements, have those open discussions, create that space for them. If you're like a teacher, you sense that a student or youth might want to talk but isn't doing so on their own, you can be the person that kind of creates like the open discussion, like how did things go, like just kind of normalize conversations with them. Show appreciation if they do come out to you. Like, as we all know, that's like a huge thing. You have to feel that trust, you have to feel safe in order to come out to somebody. So recognizing that within yourself, that like this was a big moment of like strength and courage, and now you want to kind of match that with your own courage, commitment, love, and support. So learn the terms. This is really important. This is something you can do on your own. Learning the language is a great way to start. Like, you know, using, like, normalizing the use of that like inclusive language in the classroom or just in general when you're talking. Of course, like any other human being on the planet, you'll likely make a lot of like mistakes along the way, like misgendering and stuff like that. But by like dwelling on it, like if you misgender someone, you're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, let me not do that again. That actually kind of makes it worse for the person by like making a big deal. So if you misgender someone, just quickly move on, just correct yourself and move on. Don't make a big deal about it, and work to do better next time. Expanding your knowledge on transgender issues. So don't rely on myths and stereotypes about trans people, especially what you see in the media. Supportive literature specifically intended for teachers and parents of trans youth can help you develop a better understanding of the issues and better relationship with your child or loved one. There is a lot of support. We actually have a parent group that's starting, well, it is already happening on Sundays. And then also PFLAG meetings are really informative as well. Show your support, whether it's speaking positively about a trans person you know, or a character from a movie or television show, reflecting out loud about gender or sexuality issues surfacing in the news, or openly reading and sharing new learning about gender diversity. These small hints let youth know that you're supportive and understanding. So normalizing just including trans folks, non-binary folks, anyone gender non-conforming in the conversation in the classroom. As mentioned here, like you can display like flags in the classroom to create that safe space. Like people know, like, hey, you're an ally, you're a safe person to talk to. Do not ever try to challenge your child's gender identity. This kind of goes without saying. It's important to understand that these traits are part of each person's identity and can be no more changed for a trans person than they are for anyone else. It doesn't pose any obstacles to leading a happy, healthy, productive life. With this, it's really important to also know that like gender identity is so fluid. So like if you know a trans person that dresses this way, presents this way, like another trans person might present completely different. And it's like, it goes like with that stereotype of like, well, you don't look trans. So like, that type of phrase can be really damaging. So we want to just kind of be open to their gender identity and support it. Allowing your student or loved one to express their gender identity without criticism. So kind of how I was just saying, like everyone's going to look different. Another thing with this too is like if someone comes out as like non-binary one week and then all of a sudden they're gender fluid and the next week they're trans, like honor it. Like that is how they're feeling in that week, and that is their ability to express themselves, and they need that safe space to do so. We don't want to be the person who's like ridiculing them and things like that. Use preferred name and pronouns, like we mentioned earlier. Transgender youth's choice of name and gender pronouns that best reflect their sense of self and gender is really important. Try your hardest not to dead name. Like we talked about earlier, like if you do dead name, like correct yourself and move on. If you're unsure what pronoun an individual youth prefers, ask sensitively rather than simply assuming. I kind of just go into spaces and just assume everyone's they, them until otherwise stated, just to make sure I'm not misgendering anyone. So I feel like that's a good practice. Yeah, so I think the next slide. using inclusive language, using things like partner or like folks, things like that. Make sure the language you're using is inclusive of all people. And then try to adopt gender neutral language while speaking. So kind of like that, we were talking about like partner instead of boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife. Adding, this is another really important thing that you can do, is adding your pronouns to your name or handle or email signature, or in the virtual world that we live in now, you can add it to your like Zoom name to normalize using pronouns in like any type of space. And yeah, so with that, I'm gonna pass it over to Anna.
Thank you so much, and now we are going to move on to best practices, and part of that is to educate oneself. So examine your beliefs and your attitudes that might impact your ability to support trans students or a loved one. Be aware of your own beliefs, prejudices, and gaps in knowledge surrounding issues of sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. Regardless of your personal beliefs, remember that above all, it's your responsibility to provide a safe space, nurturing, and non-judgmental environment. Educate yourself on trans issues. Use resources to help you better understand. You can visit places like our Instagram accounts, or our website, the center's website. You can go into HRC website. You can even use Google. All those are very useful to learn and be knowledgeable in the struggles and trans issues that are currently happening. Next slide. Thank you, Steph. And then also understand that being LGBTQ isn't a choice. It's something a young person can change. The leading mental health and child welfare associations have long recognized that a lesbian or gay sexual orientation is a normal variation on human sexuality and no more susceptible to change than it is a heterosexual orientation. A child or youth should never be subjected to conversion or reparative therapies for the purpose of changing sexual orientation or gender identity. Also, take advantage of community resources and learn about them. Know where to look for trans resources in your community. Seek out the support and information you need to feel comfortable engaging trans people in discussions about sexual orientation and gender identity expression. Now, another best practice is to advocate. So let's talk about how to advocate. We can stand up for trans youth if they are experiencing bullying, much like Yanel mentioned earlier. As a parent or teacher or advisor, you should protect trans youth from harm and harassment in schools, your neighborhood, and in the community. This is particularly important if a trans student or child recently made the decision to come out at school or to friends. Also, get involved, do your research, and get in contact with different groups to build your community involvement. Join a parent support group or get involved at the LGBTQ Center OC. You never know the impact of your personal story and how it might resonate with other parents or family who may need to hear it. Also, make yourself visible. Wear a supportive badge, a button, a wristband, or even a simple pride bracelet. These will let community members know that you are supportive and also an ally without saying the word. Let other staff members know that you are an ally and share with them the important role they too can play in supporting LGBTQ community members and family members as well. Communicate your support on different platforms. So effectively spreading the word on that LGBTQ inclusion represents a core element of the organization's diversity, and inclusion efforts is key to initiative success. Frequent communication on social media helps to increase awareness among employees as well. It demonstrates the organization's commitment to diversity and also inclusion to everybody. And also, talk to your district board or registrar office to update technology so it is accessible to update names. Software such as Aries, which is very popular software for registration within schools, have the capability to update students' names and gender. However, not every district board or registrar office is well versed or implements these changes. So it is important to bring this to their attention so that the right technology and practices can be implemented for the student's safety and mental health well-being. Another thing we can do too is to assess your school to determine if they have implemented comprehensive anti-bullying and harassment policies. One major step that schools can take to affirm their support for all student safety is the implementation and enforcement of comprehensive anti-bullying or harassment policies. Find out whether your school or school district has a comprehensive anti-bullying harassment policy that includes protections based on sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. Be sure that all members of the school community are regularly notified of the policy and consistently implement it. You can also advocate to include trainings and also by sharing that information yourself. And also assess your child's school to determine if they have implemented comprehensive and inclusive policies. One major step that schools can take to affirm their support for all student safety is the implementation and enforcement of comprehensive inclusive policies. A sense of belonging among students, peers, and affirmation in one's identity are crucial to being able to learn and excel in school. You can that can look like gay, straight alliance, or gender and sexualities clubs on campus. Are they established inclusive programs and policies in place or for transgender and non-binary students? Are staff supported with resources and training they need to properly support LGBTQ students on topics such as LGBTQ, inclusive terminology, and addressing bullying? Is there curricula that are fair, accurate, inclusive, respectful, and comprehensive? And that's it for our presentation. Thank you all so much for coming in and listening and sitting here with us and talk about how to advocate for our loved ones and our students. Again, my name is Anna Marson, and you can find us on social media. You can also email us. You can also go to our website and find more information on our programs and scheduling. And with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Stephanie.
Cool. Thank you so much. Like I said, we did have to shorten this presentation a little bit, but you know, we will send out the presentation in full if you're really interested in checking it out. So thank you so much for everybody's time. I'll pass it over back to Britt.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. And that was such a great presentation. And again, if you folks are looking to stay in contact or get the full version of their presentation, please feel free to reach out. And their social media information has been dropped in the chat if you folks are interested in keeping up with the LGBTQ Center youth programming. So up next, we're going to be moving into our next round of resource fair, folks. Oh, I apologize. One moment. Oh, it actually looks like there's a question in the chat, Stephanie, if you folks are interested in answering that. It's about advocating to start a club at an elementary school site.
Yes, so thank you, Kim. Kim asks, currently advocating to start a club at my elementary school site. These slides would be extremely helpful to present to administrators. I'd be interested in these slides, please. How should I reach out? Yes. So Kim, I'm going to go ahead and drop our email. So it's you. We just created a new general email for the program. So feel free to send an email out to us. or I think it might be, oh gosh. I think it's youth program. Anna, is it youth program or youth programs? Do you remember?
Let me double check right now.
Okay, I think it's,
Stephanie, Kim already emailed me, so I can connect you with them.
okay, perfect. Okay, awesome. Was that the question, Britt?
Yep,
Sorry.
that was a question. Just wanted
Okay.
to make sure you folks were paying attention to that prior to moving on to the next thing.
Cool. Thank you, thank you.